we can kind of link shields together and say, okay, you can walk forward in care because it's going to be designed just for you.
Welcome to the Honestly Adoption Podcast, a show about adoption, foster care, advocacy, and becoming the best caregiver possible. Pull up a chair. We're glad you've joined us. Here are your hosts, Mike and Kristin Berry.
Welcome to the Honestly Adoption Podcast. Man, it's so good to have you guys here. We're so glad you guys chose to carve out a little bit of time to hang out with us this week. And as you know, if you've listened to this show for a while, we're all about helping you become the best caregiver possible. My name is Mike Berry, along with Kristin Berry, and we are your hosts for this podcast. And today is season 23, episode 186, and we have a treat in store for you. We are so excited to welcome our good friend. She's been a friend of ours for years, Carrie Blaske, to the show. She is the creator, founder of Real Life Wholeness. You can find out more about her at reallifewholeness.com, but she is here today to talk about rethinking self-care for us, caregivers, parents on the foster adoption journey. You guys are going to love what she has to say because this is not your typical self-care talk. This goes way beyond that, you guys. You're going to love it. You're going to get so much out of it. We are so excited for you to meet Carrie. Listen, jump over to honestlyadoption.com/podcast. If you haven't watched last week's episode, we interviewed the amazing, the one and only Willie Moore Jr. He was amazing. Love that guy. We absolutely love that guy. Sharing all about his brand new documentary, The Missing Piece. Catch up on that episode over at our podcast website, honestlyadoption.com/podcast. And guys, that brings us to today. Back to today, our amazing interview with Carrie. Here we go, on with the show. Carrie, welcome to the Honestly Adoption Podcast. It is so great to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, and you know, you're not a stranger to any of our stuff. You've been on some of our things in the past. I'm not sure about the podcast, but I know we've done a couple of videos together and created some cool resources. You and Dave have been a friend for years now. And Kristin and I are just super excited to spend some time with you and also to share your resources, your message, your platform with our audience, because what you are all about is all about helping parents grow and become complete and healthy. So,
yes, I'm excited. Our relationship and our friendship does go way back, but our connections are multifaceted because of how we live life and our life experiences and circumstances around parenting and caregiving and supporting and loving families. So it is exciting to be able to be here with you guys today and talk about some of those options and resources for parents.
And it's a crazy life too. We talk to a lot of parents who are struggling. And I think part of the reason why we have such a great connection and friendship with you and Dave is that we have struggled. Our two families have struggled greatly. And so we can lean on each other and encourage one another. And, hopefully today that's what our audience will get out of this discussion. So I want to start right here, right out of the gate. You've been a parent on this journey for a long time, much like us. You've gone through a lot of the same trainings, a lot of the same research that we have. And out of this, one of the big reasons we have you on this show is that you've designed a brand new platform for parents and caregivers to help them reduce weariness and fatigue. And right there, even saying that, I'm sure now their ears have perked up. They're like, tell me more. So let's start there. Let's talk about that. What this new platform is all about and how you are working to help caregivers and parents reduce weariness and fatigue.
Aren't those just two hot topic words right there? Weariness and fatigue.
Totally.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So you're right. The training and the education and the things that a lot of the things that you guys have done, that we've done, combined with life experience, really do go hand in hand when you're able to connect with other parents and things. But one of the things that I found was that I got to a place a couple of years ago where the education and the training and the 32 plus years of parenting well, at that point, it was like 30 years of parenting. I started to panic a little because we were in the middle of a pretty big crisis, probably one of our biggest ones that we've had in our family. And the weariness and fatigue that I was feeling in the middle of that crisis, it was like bone deep. It was like the type of thing that a nap or going for a walk or getting a manicure, it wasn't going to touch that type of weariness. And I started to panic because I realized in the dynamics of our family, we may be in that type of crisis in and out our whole parenting journey into some of our kids' adulthood. And it just panicked me, like not, panic can kind of take energy. I didn't have energy for that kind of panic. Like it was just I want something different and I don't know what it is. And so I started wrestling with that. And out of the wants started to emerge this idea, which has now become a platform. And the wants were basically, I want a safe place where weariness and fatigue isn't looked at as a weakness.
Yeah.
It's not a weakness that I need to pick myself up to do more so that I don't feel weak or, weary or fatigued. It seemed backwards to me. Like, why is it a negative thing for parents to feel weary and fatigued? The other thing I wanted was something that could be unique and personalized to my situation. And everywhere I looked, there's great resources and there's lots of things I've gleaned from and used over the years. But what I was struggling with was our family situation has its own dynamics with our seven kids and personalities and disabilities and trauma impacts. And somehow I'm supposed to pick up one of those resources and it's going to fit me. And it just didn't. And so I was having to piecemeal things together, which isn't bad either. But then again, I'm adding work and fatigue to my already.
Yeah.
So out of those a couple years of just really wrestling with, if I know I'm not the only parent because I'm in a great community, like with you guys with Honestly Adoption, there's so many people who get it, but we can get it together and live life together, but still not have resources that really fit. And so that's kind of where that platform came from in my heart of real life wholeness. It's real life happening real fast. And I needed to rethink self-care. And that's how I came up with the platform.
Yeah. And I right there, you just said it, rethinking self-care. And I want to get into that in just a moment, but man, we totally identify with this idea that there's, you can go online, you can Google search things like self-care or, help for exhausted parents. And, we have even today, like for years now, even when we just do it now as just kind of like a little see what happens, the resources that come up, there's just like a canyon disconnect. It's like it's a person sitting on a mountainside with no kids around them, like in their yoga position. And we're like, yeah, that's not realistic, because if I tried to sit out here on my property, and meditate, I'd have a kid, climbing over my shoulders in a matter of seconds, or I'd have a dog barking, nothing, just chaos, life chaos. And so for families like ours, it's like, how do we cut through the noise of that? How do we really begin to achieve wholeness, begin to achieve healing, and start to restore our own health? You said rethinking self-care. Let's get back to that for just a moment, because first of all, self-care can be really triggering for us, for foster adoptive parents. In fact, we used to teach on self-care years ago, just straight up like, self-care, guys, you need to take care of yourself. And you just see the glaze go over people's eyes, or you'd have people, you'd see their fatigue just set in. Like, I know that, right? I know I need to take better care of myself, but how do I do it? Because the world is showing me pictures of, like, sitting on the beach in Hawaii. I can't just do that, right? Or going on a weekend summit, or going on like this lavish vacation. I can't do all that. So it becomes triggering, it becomes overwhelming for us, right? And we just kind of retreat to that defeating place. But the idea, and you and I have been dialoguing about this for a while now, the idea of rethinking self-care, right? What does that mean? Because this is turning a really well-known idea on its up on its end, right? So what does it mean to rethink self-care?
Well, and you're right. Self-care is it's like an ocean of information. It's deep in some places, shallow in some places. It works for some people, doesn't for others. And I know that for our family, the word self-care is like 2 4-letter words bumped together. Like it's like, let's just feel like it's a negative swear word, because you're right. We all know
true.
We all know we need to do it, but we're not great at it. So we're already working super hard, expending a lot of energy in caring and advocating for our kids and trying to figure out, how everything fits together. And then on top of that, don't forget self-care. And so where I wanted to get help for myself and to be able to help other parents was, what if we could take the idea of adding activities to our life, this traditional self-care idea, let's add things to do to our life to help us stay filled up so that we can pour out to others. What if you remove the activity-based thinking and actually put it into, how do I take care of myself in the moment by moment activities of my day? And a lot of them do have little activities here and there, but my process was, if you have a very big energy expenditure, so you have a child that you're spending a tremendous amount of time with, trying to help regulate, co-regulate, it could be whatever situation, I would then, in traditional thinking, need a big set of self-care activity. So if I spent hours helping a child regulate, then in reality, I should put something big in, like going on a date or planning a vacation and getting away. But what if there wasn't time for that in real life, because then the next kid had something, right? So you're just always having this deficit of, I'm going to get to this thing that's going to help me relax, take care of myself. But the expenditures are coming, the situations are coming faster than you can put them back in. So what happened to me was, I would just start rescheduling. Oh, I'll do that coffee date with a friend later, or I'll, they say, do several things in the day to help yourself out. Well, what if I can't leave the house? What if,
right.
What if putting my headphones on to listen to a song to try to help myself calm down or whatever, it actually causes more chaos in the house because of different dynamics going on with your kids. So I wanted to shift and rethink, how can we as parents rethink self-care? And I know I've heard you say this before on some of the things that you guys teach on. It's like, if we're always waiting for that time to be refreshed, or that time for things to calm down, or that time for our kids to grow and develop, we're missing the moments in between. And that's where the rethink came from. It was, let's grab the moments in between, and what does that look like? And what if it doesn't have anything to do with the people around me? What if it just has to do with me? And that in itself, being a faith-based person myself, was a massive shift of, first of all, you're a mom and you're not supposed to think of yourself first. You've got all these people you're thinking of, right?
That's the misconception. Yeah.
It totally is.
Yeah.
And it's a pressure that shouldn't be. And then also, when you're dealing with faith-based type of thinking, you're always serving others.
Yeah.
Now, I love serving others, but what happened was, in rethinking self-care, I didn't have time to keep reshifting my activities. I did have time to be present with what was going on with me in the moment, and saying to myself, I did a really good job doing X, Y, Z, and rethinking my mindfulness, my processing, I can really do this for the long haul, because it's not going to need an activity for me to feel whole or filled up again.
Yeah. Yeah. I as you were talking, I'm thinking about an illustration that we've used before. I think you've probably used it before too. Is when you're on an airplane, and flight attendants come around, and if we've ever been with our younger children, they will stop and say, just so you know, if the cabin pressure changes and masks deploy, make sure you put your mask on first and then secure the child's mask. And that's a perfect illustration of this idea that we have a misconception that, oh my gosh, well, I'm a parent, and if I focus on taking care of myself and making sure I'm healthy, then I'm being a bad parent, I'm being a bad mom, I'm being a bad dad, and because my responsibility are these little people and keeping them alive and keeping them healthy. But we miss the idea that if we are not healthy as parents, then our children will not be healthy. Our family will not be healthy. We've got to make our health and our wellness a priority. So I've always gone back to that flight attendant illustration, and what they tell you about putting your oxygen mask on first, because the airline knows that if the cabin pressure changes and you pass out cold, you're putting both of your lives at risk, instead of just taking the time necessary to care for you and then take care of your children. That's not selfish. That's not selfish.
You know that. I think in general, people know that, they've heard that explanation and it's true. And we know it in our thinking. But when it comes down to the real fatigue and weariness of what the reaching up to put that mask on looks like, I have sat on the couch and in Dave's arms, just crying so many times with him saying, you just need to do something to take care of yourself. And all I can think about is, if I do X, Y, Z, then I'm going to come home to X, Y, Z. And it's not in my brain. It's just this, I understand I'm supposed to put the mask on and I'm supposed to, and he's basically just like, here's the keys, go to the beach. And I'm thinking, and then I'm going to come home during bedtime routine, and who wants to do that? And, we get caught up in our own, we know what we're supposed to do, but the what ifs, if I actually do put myself at the top of the list, what will the fallout be? And a lot of times in our own misconceptions, we think it's going to be worse. And so I needed that to look different. I needed to know that, because my reality is, if I do actually get to go do one of those bigger activity type things, the reentry is not fun and it's not easy. It doesn't mean I'm not going to go, but I do need to be prepared at how I'm going to come back in. And I do need to be prepared to lower my expectations of what that looks like and be in that moment. But how do I live in the day-to-day, like being in a dentist's office, being riding in the car, or the transitions? Oh my goodness, the transitions of getting everybody out the door to school, everybody coming back in, or getting to the dinner table. How does rethinking self-care, how does the mask look like to me that actually impacts my thinking, not just the activity I'm doing? And that's why I started writing things down a couple of years ago. I needed it to look like care instead of self-care. And of course, because my life is so busy and there's so much going on, it became an acrostic or an acronym. It's like working in big corporations. Everything is a breakdown of something. You have no idea what they're talking about. So for care, it's connection, awareness, resilience, and empowerment. And incredibly, I found as I took those 4 things, I could take the concept of care and apply it to any situation, which then all of a sudden became this aha moment of, wait a minute, this really can be personalized to any person or any situation. It doesn't have to be a checklist of, here's some ideas of self-care activities. It's actually a thinking of, here is a care concept. Who am I connecting with? What awareness do I need about myself and the others in the room? What resiliency things can I do before and after activities that are difficult for me? And then how can I personally celebrate myself? I celebrate people. That's just one of the joys of my life. I am not great about celebrating me. And so those four things became, it doesn't matter if you have one child or a whole bunch of kids, if you have kids with disabilities, if you yourself have disabilities, if you work or you don't work, you're a single parent, or you have a partner, it doesn't matter, because care fits for everybody. And that's what I wanted, that safe place of, it's not wrong to feel tired and weary. And it's also not wrong to put yourself at the top of the list, and care worked that way. So I feel like it's an important message for parents to hear, because it is different than typical self-care.
I love that you talked about where that lives in your brain, because I think that for myself, I tend to say something like, well, if I go do this thing, the fallout's going to be bad when I get home. Sometimes that's really true. Sometimes that's not true. Sometimes the fallout is living within my own mind. So if I go do this thing without everybody else, what if I didn't take care of them well? What if I come home and I think I missed an opportunity with them? I missed something that they need. So a lot of the lack of care for myself then lives in that place in my brain that says, you should never stop the hypervigilance. You should never, take your foot off the pedal for a moment. How do you address that? Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yes, I think that I call it a swirl. It's like, it does. It just kind of loops around and swirls in your mind. And now Dave and I have totally two different personalities and processing styles. And when we sit down to communicate about what that looks like in my mind, the facial expressions on his face and he's like, that never even crosses my mind, right? Because he's not as hypervigilant as I am. And I tend to be more nurturing in my own ways as far as caretaking goes. So taking my foot off the pedal is frightening to me. And you're right, maybe 5 or 6 times out of 10, there isn't a response or reaction that's negative, but my mind believes it is, because it has happened so many times. So what care is doing for me is that it's reminding me in the moment that I can celebrate, okay, regardless of how the people react or respond when I come back to home or I go out somewhere, I know that I'm okay. I know that I have taken the steps to know who I'm connecting to. I know what my body may or may not feel like sensory-wise or being overstimulated. I'm going to be representing myself the best way I can in every situation, whether it's a mundane situation or a more difficult one. And that has relieved that swirl in my mind. It's also interesting because I always tell my kids that part, and you guys have said it too, when it's over, and you move on. If there's something that's going on, when it's done, and you go to the next thing. There is a fear of, for me, like you talked about, that swirl in your brain. If it's always there, then I can't move on. I can't move on to the next activity without thinking what I could have done better, or I missed congratulating that kid when they sent me the text, or I was a few minutes late picking them up for work, or I don't give my mind a chance to sit and celebrate in the things that I am doing that are effective. So that is a powerful thing. And I know that you guys, we've both talked about stopping that thought for a moment and capturing it and saying, okay, where am I now? Am I present? We do that to our kids all the time. Where are you? We're in the house, you're safe, all these things. But we need to do that in our mind, because activities can be done. You and I could be sitting at the beach and have a storm going on in our mind about what's going on at home or in our kids' lives. And that does not give us a chance to absorb the oxygen in that mask. We're constantly swirling in our mind.
Yeah. That's so true. A really valuable book that I read, I shared this with you, Carrie, a couple of months ago, was the book Self-Compassion by Dr. Kristin Neff. And I love that book because I believe it's like, you have, what I would call the trendy self-care, something that you hear people, you see on commercials, you see in movies and whatnot, you can Google search it, but then what's beyond that? And you just articulated that perfectly. Like, what good is it if I'm sitting on a beach, and nobody can see me doing this, but vacationing or relaxing, I'm using quotes, like air quotes, right? If I'm mentally beating myself, shredding myself, over failures, over mistakes, over what I thought I should have done better. And I'm the king at that. What's funny is that I don't live that way normally, but what I'll do is I'll hold on to something that happened years ago. Case in point, I was presenting with a world-renowned medical doctor like 3 or 4 years ago, and I goofed up on something I said on stage. Like it probably wasn't terrible. Nobody told me it was terrible, but I've held on to that. Like every time I go to create a presentation, I think, gosh, I hope I don't screw up royally like I did then. And I really didn't screw up that bad, right? But I felt like I did. And so I continued to hold on to that. And I think we do that as human beings, right? Not just with something like that, but we do that with, if we're having a bad day, if we're sad about something, if we're feeling down and we don't interact with the people that we love, our family members or friends, the way we think we should, we immediately internalize that, and we chalk it up to, I'm a failure, I'm a loser. And the voice inside of our head really does a job on us, convincing us of that, And so I think where this is valuable is that what you're talking about is it's, well, I don't want to say it's like, just telling the voice to go away. But it's recognizing that is the reality, that is something that we tend to hold on to, and working to let go of that, working to move beyond that, which I probably totally didn't do that justice, like you've done that, but that's the way, that's what I think about when I think about rethinking self-care. So I think this is really, really valuable, and impactful. Go ahead.
I was to say, I think too, that you just said recognizing, right? So in the recognizing of what's going on in your mind, that's one thing, like in Kristin's question, it was, she's recognizing that's going on in her head. And for me, and for you, you're just your recollection of that memory. So what has helped me with recognition is once you recognize it, instead of having a checklist of things to do, I started building tools of things that I could use in my day-to-day life. So in essence, it's kind of like, did you do this? Yes or no? I wanted it to move beyond that. I wanted it to be, is it simple enough to be applied while you are tired and weary? Is it practical enough to use in the middle? Like I always think of peace, people talk about inner peace and, be still in your mind. And I think, okay, but I have to learn how to be still while in motion. And that is so hard.
So hard. Yeah.
So hard to do. And so I realized in these realizations and recognitions, I needed some tools. And so with care, and with all the things, the training and the education and thing, when you're talking about neurological brain development and how human bodies are created and wired, the more we do things, the more repetition we have with them, the more they become hardwired with what we do. Yeah. So it's not just I'm going to not think about that anymore. I have to do something different to exchange that thought. Yeah. And I think a lot of us are really good at that opportunity, giving it to our children, but we don't give ourselves the opportunity to make those small changes. And so what we've done, and I think as a community, especially of parents, is that we give ourselves opportunity for activity, but the activities come and go, but we haven't built in any pattern of change. And so the tools with care, like I've created an assessment just for people to even realize where are you with your connection? Where are you with your awareness? And, the assessment is something that's free. Anybody can, I want everybody to be able to take it. And then they can dialogue back with me, and we can look at, what does your personal care assessment look like? Because your imprint and your fingerprint on that is different than mine. But the tools can be utilized because you can put your situations in there. And so there's a lot of resources that I've developed with care for myself. And because they've worked for so many years. I was like, from your encouragement and other people's, like, you should let other people know what you're doing. And so these little tools and resources, they do come with a lot of, kind of educational training background, but they really were just applied in my own life during really hard times. And so I know that they work, and I know that they're going to work for the long haul, because I'm going to be caring for a couple of my kids until I can't care for them anymore. And this has to be sustainable in change. It can't be something that I check off and go, oh yeah, where was that list the other day? It needs to be a rewiring of how I think.
It's so incredible. And your insight is such a gift. I think it will be to all of our listeners as well.
Okay. So I want to jump into this because I really want to put this out to our audience. You mentioned your free care assessment, and Carrie, you mentioned a moment ago, stands for connection, awareness, resilience, empowerment, which is so crucial for us as parents. So your new platform, your new site is reallifewholeness.com. We'll put that in the show notes if people are like feverishly writing things down. reallifewholeness.com is where you can find out all about your work with Rethinking Self-Care. But tell us more about the care assessment. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying you mentioned that this is free. And here's what we want our listeners to know, that with the care assessment, you personally connect with people that take your care assessment. This is not just a freebie download and then, good luck. It's like somebody downloads your free care assessment, which they can find over at reallifewholeness.com. And then you personally connect with them. So tell us about that. Tell our listeners about that. And just so you know, there's like 25,000 to 30,000 people that listen to this show. So, wow. I mean,
I better get some coffee, right?
To say, you better clone yourself or something if like no even pressure. More than, no pressure. But tell us more about the care assessment. Tell our listeners more about that.
Yeah. So what I wanted to do is what I would have wanted somebody to do for me.
Yes.
In those, couple years ago, as I'm driving down the freeway sobbing and, I'm missing my exit. I don't, I wanted to know, I have downloaded lots of things, lots of really great resources, but I wanted somebody to be able to say, okay, so in these areas of care, these 4 areas, I feel like I'm strong in this and I have deficits in that. I would love to have somebody say, I see that in you and you're not alone, right? That's the first part, is that I may not live your struggle, but I get it. And so that part is important. The other piece is it will help me help you know what resources to look for next, because I have just taken all the things that have been in my mind and in my life experiences and some of the training things that I've done, and I put them into content and courses and packages of information that finally, so many people in my family are like, would you please write that down? So I have, and it will help me. The care assessment will help me see you for where you are, to validate that it's not a weakness to be tired and weary, and that there are small things and tools and resources that I've used. Oh my goodness, we just pretty much across the board, everybody that I've talked to so far, just knowing your own sensory integration, how your body reacts to different things as you're parenting, that piece in its own in the care assessment is very valuable. So it's just basically I'm going to look at your assessment, and please know it is super short. and it's multiple choice. I've given you like, you don't have to write down a whole bunch of stuff. It's just going to give me a little bit of a picture of who you are and what's going on. And then so that we can kind of link shields together and say, okay, you can walk forward in care because it's going to be designed just for you.
Yeah.
Well, Carrie, we are going to have to point our listeners to all your resources because there's so much here, and there's so much that I think that our listeners are going to find valuable. Before we go, we have 2 really important questions for you.
These are hot seat questions, man.
The first,
get ready.
This is after our children told us that some of our questions stink and they really should be more interesting. So that's what happens.
They really did.
If your kids listen to your podcast.
Yeah. Right.
All right. So would you rather be forced to sing along or dance to every single song you hear?
I would rather be forced to dance.
I would rather neither. That sounds terrible.
I'd rather sing. I'd rather sing.
That's because you can sing.
That's because I can sing. So.
We are a dancing house, and my little 3-year-old granddaughter, I mean, it's all about the dancing. It's all about the princess. And if I had to sing, it would be frightening for the family.
All right. One last one while we have you here. Would you rather be chronically underdressed or overdressed?
Overdressed. Yes.
I think everybody could agree with that.
Yeah. Well, I guess if you change the question a little bit to like underdressed for an occasion or underdressed as in not enough clothes. There's a big there.
I'm thinking like Reese Witherspoon in Legally Blonde when she shows up dressed as the bunny.
Oh yeah.
At the quote costume party. If
I'll have to ask that another time. Would you be rather?
Yeah. I think because I'm a people person, put all the bling and all the dresses or whatever you need, because I'm not afraid to talk to people about it. If I was underdressed, because I love people, the people pleasing part of me would be like, oh no,
Yeah.
So
true.
Overdress me.
Yeah. Wow.
I love that. Carrie, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. We appreciate you so much.
I appreciate you guys and the opportunity to, just empower and encourage your community of people. It's a great gift to be able to share information with each other because we can't do this alone.
That's true.
That's right.
Yeah. Listeners, go to reallifewholeness.com, check out Carrie's resources, download that care assessment, go through it. And then Carrie is right there to care for you and walk with you. It is an awesome resource. It really is. And we highly recommend it.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Honestly Adoption Podcast, a resource courtesy of the Honestly Adoption Company. To learn more about us, visit www.honestlyadoption.com.